Welcome to Chapter 2, Polynomials. You'll learn what the zeros of a polynomial really are, the points where its graph meets the x-axis. You'll see how the degree limits how many zeros there can be. Then the key idea, for a quadratic, the zeros are secretly tied to the coefficients, they add up to minus b over a and multiply to c over a. You'll even build a quadratic backwards from its zeros. We work every example and every exercise step by step, then finish with exam practice.
In the darkness of the unknown, a stuck student finds their way, the greatest minds, and turn confusion into brilliance.
Let's start with a picture, because a polynomial isn't just a string of symbols, it's a shape. Every quadratic, anything of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, draws this same graceful U-shape called a parabola. Watch this one sweep across the plane. That curve I is the polynomial, the equation is just its address. Now, what does it mean for the polynomial to have a zero? A zero is simply an x value where the polynomial's output equals 0. And here's the key link, the height of the curve at any x is exactly that output value. So where the output is 0, the height is 0, and the only place a curve has 0 height is where it touches the ground, the x-axis. That's why the zeros are precisely where the curve meets that horizontal line. Here, that happens at -1 and at 2. So we don't have to solve a single equation to see the zeros, we just count where the curve crosses the axis. 2 crossings, 2 zeros. The picture and the algebra are telling us the same thing. Now a natural question, how many zeros can a polynomial even have? Let's build up the answer by looking at the shapes. A straight line, that's degree 1, just x to the first power, can only cut across the axis one single time. It has no room to bend back, so at most 1 0. Give it one more degree, a parabola, degree 2. Now the curve is allowed to bend once, dip down and come back up, so it can slice the axis on the way down and again on the way up, at most twice. One bend buys one extra crossing. A cubic, degree 3, can bend twice, down, down, so it can meet the axis up to 3 times. Do you see the rule forming? Each extra degree buys one more possible turn, and each turn one more possible crossing. That's the deep reason a degreean polynomial can have at most n zeros. The algebra says a factor gives each 0, and you can't fit more than n factors into degree n. The degree is the ceiling. So hold on to this, degree n, at most n zeros. Notice it says at most, a curve can always miss the axis and have fewer, but it can never have more. Now the secret at the heart of this chapter, and I want you to actually see it happen, not just take my word. Take a quadratic and mark its 2 zeros, let's name them alpha and beta, the Greek letters we always use for roots. Here's where the magic comes from. If alpha and beta are the zeros, the polynomial must factor as x minus alpha times x minus beta, because that product is 0 exactly at those 2 spots. Now expand it, you get x squared minus alpha plus beta times x plus alpha times beta. Look at that middle coefficient and that last one. I'll track 2 live numbers as I slide the zeros, their sum, alpha plus beta, and their product, alpha beta. Slide the right-hand 0 outward and watch. The sum climbs, and the product climbs with it, and the whole curve reshapes itself to keep passing through both marked points, because those points are the zeros. The numbers on the right aren't decoration, they're the coefficients being born from the roots. Now slide it back through the origin. The moment the two zeros sit on opposite sides of 0, one positive, one negative, their product flips to negative, exactly as multiplying a positive by a negative demands. The sign of that constant is literally telling us whether the zeros share a side. And here is the punchline, straight from that expansion. For x squared plus bx plus c, matching terms, b must equal minus alpha plus beta, so the sum of the zeros is minus b, and c must equal alpha beta, so the product is c. Written for a general leading coefficient a, that sum equals minus b over a and product equals c over a. Nothing memorized, it fell straight out of multiplying the factors. The zeros and the coefficients are the same information, told two ways. Here's the beautiful payoff. If the zeros and coefficients are the same information, we can run the whole thing backwards. Instead of being handed a polynomial and hunting its zeros, suppose we want a quadratic with zeros 2 and minus 3, and we have to build it. Can we? Absolutely. The recipe is exactly the sum and product relation, read in reverse. First get the two quantities the polynomial cares about, the sum, 2 plus minus 3, is minus 1, the product, 2 times minus 3, is minus 6. Now drop them into the expanded shape we found, x squared minus the sum times x plus the product. Minus a sum of minus 1 becomes plus x, and the product minus 6 sits at the end, out comes x squared plus x minus 6. And there's the proof it worked. The parabola sails through exactly 2 and minus 3, precisely the zeros we ordered. So take away the one idea that unlocks everything ahead. The zeros you can see on the graph and the coefficients you write in the equation are not two separate facts to learn, they're one story, told two ways, tied together by sum equals minus b over a and product equals c over a. Hold that, and every example and exercise becomes the same familiar move. Now let's work through them all. Now the 5 worked examples straight from the textbook, and we'll take each one slowly, never just doing a step, but always saying why that step is the right move and where the rule behind it comes from, so the method sticks, not just the answer. Example 1. This is the friendliest kind of zeros question because there's no algebra at all. The graph hands us the answer if we know what to look for. Let's see exactly how to read it. Let's set up the one idea we need. A 0 of p of x is, by definition, an x value where the polynomial's output is 0. On a graph, the output is the height of the curve, so a 0 is a point of 0 height. That means we hunt for where the curve touches or crosses the x-axis and nowhere else. You might ask, why the x-axis specifically? Because every single point on that horizontal line has height y equal to 0, that's what the x-axis is. So the instant the curve lands on it, the polynomial's value is 0, and we've found a 0. That's the whole connection between the picture and the algebra. Now we just count, graph by graph. Graphs 1, 4 and 5 each meet the axis at a single point, so 1 0 each, 1 meeting, 1 0. Graph 2 touches the axis in 2 places, so 2 zeros, graph 3 in 3 places, so 3. We are literally reading the answers of the picture. And graph 6 meets the axis at 4 separate places, so 4 zeros, the most on the page, and a hint its polynomial is at least degree 4. So here's the takeaway to carry forward: the number of zeros is never mysterious. It's simply how many times the graph meets the x-axis, so any graph question you solve by counting crossings, no solving required. Example 2. Now we have no graph, just the algebra, so we'll factor to find the zeros, and then, as a bonus, prove the sum and product relations actually hold for this polynomial. That proof is also our safety check. Let's set up the plan. To find zeros, we turn the quadratic into a product of two brackets. Why brackets? Because a product equals 0 only when one of its factors is 0, that's the zero product idea, so once it's factored, the zeros fall right out. The tool for factoring is splitting the middle term. We need two numbers that multiply to the constant 10 and add to the middle coefficient 7. That pairing is exactly the product and sum pattern, and here it's 2 and 5. Now use those numbers to rewrite 7x as 2x plus 5x. We haven't changed the polynomial one bit. 2x plus 5x is still 7x. We've just opened it up so it can be grouped. Group the four terms into two pairs and pull the common factor out of each. The whole aim of the split was to make each pair share something, and it does. Look, both pieces now carry the same bracket, x plus 2. That shared bracket is the signal the split worked. Pull it out front as a common factor. Factored at last. Now apply the zero product idea. The product is 0 when x plus 2 is 0 or x plus 5 is 0, giving x equals minus 2 and minus 5. Those are our zeros. Now the bonus check. Read off the coefficients against ax squared plus bx plus c so we can test the relations from Act 1. The relation says the sum of the zeros must equal minus b over a. Let's actually test it. Minus 2 plus minus 5 is minus 7, and minus b over a is minus 7 too. It matches. The derivation from the factors was no accident. And the product of the zeros must equal c over a. Minus 2 times minus 5 is 10, and c over a is 10. Both relations confirmed on a real example. The lasting insight: for any quadratic the zeros are locked to the coefficients, sum is minus b over a, product is c over a. So these two checks aren't busywork, and they instantly catch a wrong sign or a slipped factor before it costs you marks. Example 3. Notice this one has no middle x term at all, just x squared minus 3. When you spot that gap, don't force the splitting method. There's a faster, cleaner pattern made exactly for this shape. Let's set up the right tool. With no middle term, we reach for the difference of squares identity. A squared minus b squared factors as a minus b times a plus b. It comes from expanding that product. The two middle terms cancel, which is precisely why it fits an expression with no middle term. To use it, we write our expression as one square minus another. X squared is already a square, and 3 is root 3 squared, so this is x squared minus root 3 squared. A perfect fit with b equal to root 3. Now just apply the identity. A minus b times a plus b becomes x minus root 3 times x plus root 3. Factored in a single step, no splitting needed. Set each factor to 0, and the zeros are root 3 and minus root 3, a pair that's equal in size but opposite in sign. Hold that thought. Let's verify with the relations. Read the coefficients. A is 1, C is -3, and B is 0. Because there's no x term, the middle coefficient really is 0 here. Check the sum. √3 plus minus √3 is 0, and minus b over a is -0/1, also 0. The vanished middle term and the 0 sum are the same fact seen twice. Check the product. √3 times minus √3 is -3, and c over a is -3. Both relations hold, exactly as the derivation promised. Takeaway: whenever the middle term is missing, the zeros come out equal and opposite, and that's not a coincidence. Sum equals minus b over a, and with b 0 the sum must be 0, which forces the two zeros to be exact mirror images. Example 4 flips the direction. Until now we were given a polynomial and found its zeros. Here we are given the sum and product of the zeros and must build the polynomial. Same relationship, just read backwards. Let's set up the reconstruction. From Act 1 we know a quadratic can be written as x squared minus the sum of the zeros times x plus their product. That single template is the reverse of everything we've done, and it's all we need. Here's why that template is legitimate, not a trick. For x squared plus bx plus c the sum of zeros is minus b and the product is c, so the sum sits in the middle slot with a minus sign and the product sits in the constant slot. Plugging our given numbers into those exact slots rebuilds the quadratic. Substitute now. The sum is -3, so minus the sum gives -3. The product is 2, sitting at the end. Simplify that double sign. Minus a -3 is plus 3x, and we land on x squared plus 3x plus 2. That's a quadratic whose zeros add to -3 and multiply to 2, exactly as ordered. One honest subtlety: multiplying the whole thing by any non-zero k doesn't move the zeros. Scaling never changes where a curve crosses the axis, so strictly the answer isn't unique. Takeaway: a given sum and product don't pin down one single polynomial. They pin down a whole family, k times the base, every member sharing the same zeros. We just quote the simplest member, with k equal to 1. Example 5 steps up to a cubic, degree 3. Two jobs here. First, verify each of the three given values really is a 0, and then check the cubic's three coefficient relations, the natural extension of the pair we know. Let's set up what verifying means. To confirm a value is a 0, we don't resolve anything. We substitute it straight into p of x and check the output is exactly 0, because that's the definition of a 0. Then we'll test the three relations that govern a cubic. Start with x equals 3. Substitute and simplify term by term. 81 minus 45 minus 33 minus 3 lands on exactly 0. So 3 passes, it's a genuine 0. Now x equals -1. Mind the signs on the odd and even powers. -3 minus 5 plus 11 minus 3 also comes out to 0. To confirmed. Finally, x equals -1/3. Substituting and simplifying gives 0 as well. All three values return 0, so all three are confirmed zeros, and since a cubic can have at most 3, we've now found every one of them. On to the relations. Read off all four coefficients against a x cubed plus b x squared plus c x plus d, so a is 3, b minus 5, c minus 11, d minus 3. First relation, the same idea as a quadratic. The sum of all three zeros equals minus b over a, 3 minus 1 minus a third is 5 thirds, and minus b over a is minus 5 over 3, also 5 thirds. It matches. 2 more, unique to the cubic. The sum of the zeros taken in pairs equals c over a, that's minus 11 over 3, and the product of all three equals minus d over a, which works out to 1. Both check out, so the cubic's whole relation set is verified. Takeaway: a cubic isn't a new world, it just extends the quadratic pattern. It keeps sum equals minus b over a, keeps a product relation now as minus d over a, and slots one new middle relation, the pairwise sum equals c over a, between them. Learn the quadratic and the cubic is almost free. Now every exercise from the textbook, written out line by line exactly the way you'd solve it on paper, nothing skipped, and a reason given for every single line, so you're never wondering why a step appeared. Exercise 2.1 is pure graph reading. For each picture, we just count where the curve meets the x-axis. Let's be careful about what counts as a meeting. Let's fix the one rule first. The number of zeros equals exactly how many times the curve actually meets the x-axis, no more, no less, because a zero needs the height y to be 0, and that only happens on the axis itself. Graph 1 floats entirely above the axis and never touches it, so it has 0 zeros. A curve is allowed to miss the axis completely. Graph 2 just grazes or crosses the axis at a single point, so 1 0. Graph 3 meets the axis at 3 distinct places, so 3 zeros. Graph 4 dips down and back, meeting the axis twice, so 2 zeros. Graph 5 weaves across the axis 4 times, so 4 zeros. And graph 6 meets the axis at 3 points, so 3 zeros. Takeaway: only the actual crossings count. A curve can have tall peaks and deep dips, but unless it truly touches the x-axis, those turning points are not zeros. Height 0 is the only thing that qualifies. Part 1. The leading coefficient is 1, so this is the cleanest case of factoring by splitting the middle term. Let's do every line. Let's set the plan. We'll split the middle term so the quadratic breaks into two brackets, because zeros drop straight out of a product of factors. The split needs two numbers with a precise job. They must multiply to the constant, minus 8, and add to the middle coefficient, minus 2. That product and sum requirement is the sum and product rule in disguise. Hunt for that pair, minus 4 and plus 2 multiply to minus 8 and add to minus 2. Perfect. Use them to rewrite the middle term minus 2x as minus 4x plus 2x, same value, just opened up so we can group. Group the first two terms and the last two terms into pairs. Pull the common factor out of each pair, x from the first, 2 from the second. Both pairs now carry the identical bracket x minus 4. That's the sign the split worked, so factor it out. Now the zero product idea, set the first factor to 0 to get x equals 4. and set the second factor to 0 to get x equals minus 2. Those are the two zeros. Now verify, the sum of zeros should be minus b over a. 4 plus minus 2 is 2, and minus b over a is 2, it matches. And the product should be c over a. 4 times minus 2 is minus 8, and c over a is minus 8. Confirmed. Takeaway: the two numbers you split with are the very same sum and product the zeros obey. That's precisely why the verification always passes when your factoring is right, and fails the moment it isn't. Part 2. Before grinding through splitting, always glance for a shortcut. This one is a hidden perfect square. Let's set up smart. Before we split anything, we check whether the quadratic is secretly a perfect square, because that factors in one clean move. Test the two end terms. 4 squared is 2's all squared, and 1 is 1 squared. Both ends are perfect squares, which is the first hint. Confirm the middle. For a minus b all squared, it must be minus 2 times 2 times 1, which is minus 4, and that's exactly our middle term. So it collapses to 2's minus 1, all squared. Because the factor is repeated, we set that single bracket, 2's minus 1, to 0. It will hand us one value, but count it twice. Solve. S equals 1/2, and we list it twice because the factor appeared twice. Verify the sum using both copies. 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1, and minus b over a is 1. It only matches because we counted the repeated 0 twice. Verify the product. 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4, and c over a is 1/4. Confirmed. Takeaway: a perfect square gives 1 0 counted twice, a repeated root. The trap is writing it once. You must use both copies, which is why the sum comes out to 1, not 1/2. Part 3 throws to curvables. The terms are out of order, and the leading coefficient isn't 1. Both are easy once you know the fix. First fix: the terms are jumbled, so write them in standard descending order, powers high to low. Splitting only works when the middle term is genuinely in the middle. Second fix: with a leading coefficient of 6, we can't just use the constant. We split using a times c. 6 times minus 3 gives minus 18, and still need a pair adding to the middle, minus 7. Find the pair, minus 9 and plus 2 multiply to minus 18 and add to minus 7. Rewrite the middle term minus 7x as minus 9x plus 2x. Group into two pairs. Pull the common factor from each, 3x from the first, and 1 from the second, so the shared bracket shows. Both pairs share 2x minus 3, so factor it out. Set the first factor to 0, 2x minus 3 is 0 gives x equals 3/2. Set the second to 0, 3x plus 1 is 0 gives x equals minus 1/3. Verify the sum. 3/2 minus 1/3 is 7/6, and minus b over a is 7/6. Matches. Verify the product. 3/2 times minus 1/3 is minus 1/2, equal to c over a. Confirmed. Takeaway: to habits to lock in, always reorder to standard form first, and whenever the leading coefficient isn't 1, split using a times C instead of just C. That single adjustment keeps the whole method working. Part 4 has no constant term at all, and that gap is actually a gift, because it makes the factoring trivial. Let's set up. With no constant term, both terms already carry a factor of u, so we don't split, we just pull out the common piece directly. Both terms share 4u, so factor it out to leave 4u times u plus 2. Apply zero product. The factor 4u is 0 when u is 0, the 4 itself can never be 0, so it's u that must vanish. And the bracket u plus 2 is 0 when u equals minus 2. There are our two zeros. Verify the sum. 0 plus minus 2 is minus 2, and minus b over a is minus 2. Matches. Verify the product. 0 times minus 2 is 0, and c over a is 0 too, since c is 0. Confirmed. Takeaway: whenever the constant term is missing, 0 is guaranteed to be exactly 0, you can see it coming. And that's precisely why the product of the zeros, c over a, comes out to 0. Part 5 is t squared minus 15, no middle term again, and 15 isn't a neat square, but the difference of squares pattern still cracks it wide open. Set up. With no middle term, reach for the difference of squares identity. A squared minus b squared equals a minus b times a plus b. It's built for exactly this two-term shape. To fit the pattern, we write 15 as root 15 squared. It looks odd, but root 15 squared is genuinely 15, so nothing has changed. We've just made the square visible. Now apply the identity with a as t and b as root 15. Set the first factor to 0, t equals root 15. Set the second to 0, t equals minus root 15. A matched pair. Verify the sum. Root 15 minus root 15 is 0, and minus b over a is 0 since there's no middle term. Verify the product. Root 15 times minus root 15 is minus 15, equal to c over a. Confirmed. Takeaway: t squared minus any positive number always factors into equal and opposite roots, plus and minus its square root. Because they're mirror images, their sum is always 0, which is just the missing middle term showing up again. Part 6. Another leading coefficient of 3, so we practice the a times c split once more until it feels automatic. Setup. Leading coefficient is 3, not 1, so we split the middle term using a times c rather than just the constant. Compute a times c. 3 times minus 4 is minus 12, and we need a pair that also adds to the middle coefficient minus 1. The pair is minus 4 and plus 3, product minus 12, sum minus 1. Rewrite the middle term minus x as minus 4x plus 3x. Group into two pairs. Pull the common factor from each, x from the first, 1 from the second to expose the bracket. Both share 3x minus 4. So factor it out. Set each factor to 0, x equals 4/3 and x equals minus 1. Verify the sum. 4/3 minus 1 is 1/3, and minus b over a is 1/3. Matches. Verify the product. 4 thirds times minus 1 is minus 4 thirds, equal to C over A confirmed. Takeaway: notice the sum and product checks aren't just a formality, they're a genuine proof your factoring was correct. If either check failed, you'd know instantly to hunt for a slip, and that's marks saved in the exam. Now Q2 reverses everything. We are given the sum and product and must build the quadratic. Part 1 starts us off. Setup. To build a quadratic from its zeros sum and product, we use the template x squared minus the sum times x plus the product, the reverse of the relation we've verified all along. Substitute the given values, sum 1/4, product minus 1, into their slots. Tidy the signs, plus minus 1 is just minus 1. Fractions are ugly to leave in an answer, so multiply every term by 4 to clear the quarter. This scales the whole polynomial but leaves the zeros untouched. Takeaway: multiplying through by a constant is always allowed here because it clears fractions without moving a single zero. A scaled curve still crosses the axis in exactly the same places. Part 2 swaps in an irrational sum, √2, but a surd is just a number, so the exact same build template applies. Setup: same template as before, x squared minus sum x plus product. The method doesn't care whether the numbers are whole, fractional, or irrational. Substitute some √2 and product 1/3 straight into their slots. Clear the 1/3 by multiplying every term by 3, which turns the middle term into minus 3 √2x, zeros unchanged, fraction gone. Takeaway: an irrational sum isn't special, it simply rides along into the middle coefficient, here as minus 3 √2. Don't let the surd rattle you, treat it exactly like any other number. Part 3 has a sum of 0. Watch what that does to the middle term. Setup: same build template, x squared minus sum x plus product. Substitute sum 0 and product √5. 0 times x is nothing, so the middle term vanishes entirely, leaving just x squared plus √5. Takeaway: a zero sum always erases the middle term. This is the same fact we met with equal and opposite roots, now running in reverse. Sum 0 means no x term, every time. Part 4 is the gentlest case, both values are 1, so it's pure substitution with nothing to clean up. Setup: the same build template, applied directly. Substitute sum 1 and product 1. Simplify 1 times x to x, giving x squared minus x plus 1. Takeaway: when the sum and product are whole numbers, the template hands you a tidy polynomial with no fractions to clear and no scaling needed, the easiest version of this problem type. Part 5 hides the classic trap of this whole topic. The sum itself is negative, so the template's minus sign meets a minus. Go slowly. Setup: same template, but here we must watch the sign carefully, because the template already subtracts the sum and the sum is itself negative. Substitute sum minus 1/4 and product 1/4. Notice the minus in front now sits against a minus 1/4. Resolve the double negative. Minus of minus 1/4 becomes plus 1/4 x. This is exactly where students lose the mark. Now clear the quarters by multiplying every term by 4, giving 4x squared plus x plus 1. Takeaway: subtracting a negative sum flips it to a positive middle term. This is the classic sign slip in the chapter. Whenever the given sum is negative, expect a plus in the middle and double check it. Part 6 closes the set with a clean whole number pair, straight substitution to consolidate the method. Setup: apply the build template directly, no fractions or signs to worry about. Substitute sum 4 and product 1, and it's already finished, x squared minus 4x plus 1. Takeaway: step back and see the symmetry. This build template is the exact reverse of the sum and product rule. Given a polynomial, you extract sum and product. Given sum and product, you rebuild the polynomial. Same relationship, both directions. Finally, let's lock it in for the exam. We'll work new pattern questions and real board questions, and for every one, I'll explain not just why the right answer is right, but why each tempting wrong option is a trap, because dodging traps is half the battle in a multiple choice paper. Question 1. A graph cuts the x-axis at 3 distinct points, and we are asked for the number of zeros. Consider the 4 options. Recall the core idea. A zero is where the height is 0, which is where the curve meets the x-axis, so each crossing is exactly 1 0. 3 distinct crossings therefore mean 3 zeros, and that's option C. The other options tempt you if you forget that crossings and zeros are the very same thing. Question 2. Alpha and beta are the zeros of x squared minus 5x plus 6, and we want their sum. Consider the 4 options. We don't even need to find the zeros, the sum relation gives it instantly. Sum equals minus b over a. Here a is 1 and b is minus 5, so it's minus of minus 5, which is plus 5. Option A, watch the trap. Option B, minus 5, is exactly what you'd get if you forgot the leading minus sign in the formula, the single most common slip here. Question 3. Which quadratic has zeros 2 and minus 3? This is the build backwards direction. Consider the 4 options. Use the build template, x squared minus sum x plus product. The sum is 2 plus minus 3, which is minus 1, and the product is 2 times minus 3, which is minus 6. Minus a sum of minus 1 gives plus x, and the product sits at the end as minus 6, so x squared plus x minus 6, option B. The traps are instructive. Option A, minus x, comes from a sign error on the sum, and options C and D use plus 6, forgetting that a positive times a negative 0 must give a negative product. Question 4. 1 0 of x squared minus 3x minus 10 is 5, and we need the other 0. Consider the 4 options. Here's the clever shortcut. Instead of refactoring, use the product relation. The product of the two zeros is C over A, which is minus 10. 1 0 is 5, so the other must be minus 10 divided by 5, which is minus 2. Option B, notice you could also check with the sum. Minus b over a is 3, and 5 plus minus 2 is indeed 3, a nice cross-check. Trap option D, minus 5, tempts anyone who confuses the sum and product relations. Question 5. Find the product of the zeros of 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 and notice the leading coefficient is 3, not 1. Consider the 4 options. Product of zeros is C over A. Here C is minus 2 and A is 3, so the product is minus 2 over 3. Option C. The reason A matters is that these relations always divide by the leading coefficient. That's why we can't just read minus 2 off the constant. Trap options A and B use 5 over 3, which is what you'd get if you mistakenly used B instead of C. Assertion reason 1. In this format we judge two statements separately, then ask whether the second explains the first. Assertion: the zeros of x squared minus 2x minus 8 are 4 and minus 2. Reason: for ax squared plus bx plus c, the sum of zeros is minus b over a and the product is c over a. Which option is correct? Let's test both, then the link. Factor x squared minus 2x minus 8 into x minus 4 times x plus 2. So the zeros really are 4 and minus 2. The assertion is true. The reason is a true general law. Now the crucial part, does the reason produce the assertion? Their sum, 4 plus minus 2, is 2, which equals minus b over a. Their product, minus 8, equals c over a. So the reason isn't just true alongside the assertion, it's the very rule that generates it. That's why it's option A, both true, and the reason is the correct explanation. Assertion reason 2. Assertion: a quadratic with sum of zeros 0 and product minus 9 is x squared minus 9. Reason: a quadratic with sum s and product p of zeros is k times x squared minus sx plus p. Which option is correct? Apply the reason directly to test the assertion. Substitute s equals 0 and p equals minus 9 into k times x squared minus sx plus p. The middle term dies because s is 0, and we get k times x squared minus 9. Taking k as 1 gives exactly x squared minus 9, whose zeros are plus and minus 3, a matched pair, just as a zero sum demands. So the assertion is true, the reason is true, and the reason is precisely the construction that yields the assertion. Option A once more. A case study, and here's where polynomials meet the real world. A ball is thrown upward, and its height in meters after t seconds is minus t squared plus 6t. Notice this is a quadratic in t, so everything we've learned about zeros and parabolas is about to describe an actual flying ball. Part 1 asks when the ball is at ground level. Ground level means height 0, so we set h equal to 0, and the times we find are literally the zeros of this polynomial. The abstract idea now has a physical meaning. Factor out the common t to get t times 6 minus t equals 0. That gives t equals 0, the moment of launch, and t equals 6 seconds, the moment it lands. 2 zeros, to real events in the ball's flight. Part 2 asks us to check the sum and product relations straight from the coefficients, a chance to confirm the same rules govern this real situation. From the coefficients, sum is minus b over a, which is minus 6 over minus 1, equal to 6, and 0 plus 6 really is 6. Product is c over a, and with no constant term c is 0, so the product is 0, matching 0 times 6. The relations hold even here. Part 3 simply asks for the height at t equals to seconds. Now we are not finding a zero, we are evaluating the polynomial at a point. Substitute t equals 2, minus 2 squared plus 6 times 2 is minus 4 plus 12, which is 8 meters. So 2 seconds in, the ball is 8 meters up, well above the ground, exactly as we'd expect between launch and landing. This one is a genuine board favorite, so it's worth doing carefully. Leading coefficient is 6, so we split the middle term using a times c, then verify the relations to secure full marks. Since a times c is 6 times minus 3, minus 18, and the middle is minus 7, the pair is minus 9 and plus 2. Split minus 7x into minus 9x plus 2x, group, and it factors as 3x plus 1 times 2x minus 3. Set each factor to 0. The zeros are minus 1/3 from the first bracket and 3/2 from the second. Now the verification the board always wants. Sum is minus 1/3 plus 3/2, which is 7/6, equal to minus b over a, and the product is minus 1/2, equal to c over a, both relations confirmed. So the zeros are minus 1/3 and 3/2, and the relations check out. In the exam, always write that verification line. It's often worth a mark on its own and proves your factoring was sound. A third version that scares a lot of students, but the method is identical. We just carry root 3 along carefully. Here a times c is root 3 times 7 root 3, which is 21, so we split 10x accordingly. The pair multiplying to 21 and adding to 10 is 3 and 7. Split 10x into 3x plus 7x, group, and it factors neatly as root 3x plus 7 times x plus root 3. Set each factor to 0. From the first, x is minus 7 over root 3, which we rationalize to minus 7 root 3 over 3. From the second, x is minus root 3. Let's verify with the product. Since it's the cleanest check here, minus root 3 times minus 7 over root 3, the root 3's cancel and we get 7, exactly c over a, which is 7 root 3 over root 3. Confirmed. So the zeros are minus root 3 and minus 7 root 3 over 3. The lesson: surds never change the method, split, factor, and verify exactly as always, just rationalizing at the end to present a tidy answer. Before the exam, let's lock in everything from this chapter, but not as a bare list to memorize. For each formula, I'll remind you in one line where it comes from, so it stays anchored to understanding, the key formulas, the smart shortcuts, the traps to dodge, and a few memory hooks. Here is the whole chapter on one card, each formula with its reason attached. A zero is where the curve meets the x-axis, because a zero means height 0, and height is 0 only on the axis. A Degrean polynomial has at most n zeros, because it has at most n factors and each factor gives 1 0. For a quadratic, expand a times x minus alpha times x minus beta and you find the zeros, add to minus b over a and multiply to c over a. That's where both relations are born. To build a quadratic backwards, just read that expansion in reverse, drop the sum and product into x squared minus sum x plus product. And a cubic simply extends the same expansion 1 degree further. Sum is minus b over a, the pairwise sum is c over a, and the product of all three is minus d over a. A graph question is a gift, and here's why it works. A zero needs the output, the height, to be 0, and height is 0 only on the x-axis, so the zeros are simply where the curve meets that axis. Just count the crossings. 3 crossings, 3 zeros. You never have to solve a single equation. Never trust a zero blindly, substitute it back, because the definition of a zero is simply a value that makes p of x equal 0. So put the value into p of x, and if you get exactly 0, it's genuinely a 0. If you don't, you've caught an error before it spreads. It takes 10 seconds and saves you from a whole wrong answer. To build a quadratic from its zeros, first find their sum and their product, then write x squared minus sum x plus product. Why that shape? Because expanding x minus alpha times x minus beta gives exactly that, so you're just running the factoring in reverse. And remember, any non-zero multiple case shares the same zeros, scaling never moves a crossing, so the answer is really a whole family, and we simply quote the simplest member. The number one trap in this chapter, the sum of the zeros is minus b over a, not plus. Where does that minus come from? When you expand the factors, the middle coefficient b comes out as minus the sum, so undoing it puts the minus back on the sum. It's not arbitrary. What's that sign? The product is the friendly one, plus c over a, because c comes out as the product directly, with no sign flip. Don't overclaim the count. The degree is a ceiling, not a promise, because a curve is always free to miss the axis on some of its turns. A cubic has at most 3 zeros, but it can have fewer. Think of a parabola that floats entirely above the axis with 0 real zeros. The number of zeros never exceeds the degree, but it can certainly fall short. Here's a memory hook. Sum is minus b over a, product is c over a. And to make it stick rather than just sit in memory, recall it came straight from expanding x minus alpha times x minus beta. The sum landed on b with a flipped sign, the product landed on c cleanly. Say it once and the whole relationship between zeros and coefficients is yours. Just never forget the minus on the sum. And one more, the degree is the ceiling. The reason is that a degreean polynomial breaks into at most n factors, and each factor supplies at most 1 zero, so the count can touch the degree but never climb above it. Degree n means at most n zeros. In 60 seconds, and every line earned, not just recited, zeros are where the graph meets the x-axis, because a zero is a point of zero height. A degreean polynomial has at most n zeros, because it has at most n factors. For a quadratic, the sum is minus b over a and the product is c over a, both falling straight out of expanding the factored form. Build one backwards with k times x squared minus sum x plus product, which is that expansion in reverse. And the cubic extends the same idea 1 degree up, sum minus b over a, pairways sum c over a, product minus d over a. Understand where each came from, and you're truly exam ready.